That was a joke.
I thought so. You keep deferring. That's okay. I understand.
Right. I yield the floor to Bambi.
Hey, Tanya. Do we have a quorum?
As of right now, you do not.
Okay.
Let's see. You're here. Kim Bazil is here, and Mary Tarver is here. Oh, Nicole Banks just joined us. So that would give you 4 members. You need 5 for a quorum. Unless I missed anyone.
Nicole says that she's here. She's having technical difficulties.
Tanya, do you know if Julie's joining?
My understanding is that she was going to try, but that she was about triple booked for this time slot. So she may or may not.
Okay.
But I got the OCDD part handled.
Yeah, we just need a quorum, so that's what I was just saying.
Oh, okay.
I know you have it handled. I have confidence.
Okay. Okay.
I do know Jill Eagley will not be able to join us. She sent me a message right before we started.
Okay, I think Corman's about to come on.
Yeah, based on the availability that was sent, we should have a quorum. So there are a couple people that have mentioned they would be available that I'm waiting to see them pop up.
So we'll just wait a couple more minutes. We have a couple people that I think are getting on, so we'll just give them a couple more minutes and we'll get started. Oh, there's Corman. Hey, Corman. So do we have a quorum now, Brenton?
If everyone could turn their cameras on, if you're on the committee, I'll double check, make sure that we have a quorum. And you do have a quorum. I'll just go ahead and do roll call just to make sure. Miss Nicole Banks. I see her. I don't know, she might not be able to unmute. I know she was having some difficulties.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Miss Kim Bazile,
Present.
Miss Carmen Setnor,
I'm here.
Miss Bambi Polizzola,
Here?
Miss Mary Tarver.
Here.
Okay. Do we have, well, Miss Jill Eagley will not be able to make it. Miss Julie Hagan, were you able to join us? I don't think so. Dr. Hyacinth McKee. I don't see her on. Miss Crystal White. Okay, but you do have a quorum of 5 members.
Okay. And I think Crystal and Hyacinth are going to try and get on too. So
Okay.
be watching for them. So hi, everyone, and welcome to the Act 378 Subcommittee. We will get started with welcome, which I'm doing now, and introductions. And I guess the roll call you just did, Brenton, did that suffice for that, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll move on to the approval of the July meeting summary, I should say. And everyone, it's linked in our agenda. We can review that and then we'll need a motion to approve.
As long as there are no objections, you can just approve it by unanimous consent.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to look at it? I'll give you a second and just let me know if there's anything that needs to be changed. Okay, hearing none, we'll approve by unanimous consent. Okay. We've caught up on the time already. Very good. So now we'll go on to our Office of Behavioral Health report. Dr. Kristen Savicki will present for Office of Behavioral Health.
Hello, everyone. I'll go ahead and wait for the reports to show up on screen, and then we'll just take them in the, I think, in the order that's on the agenda. Great. And yes, as usual, this is difficult to read on Zoom. So this is the year-end report for children served using these funds who are eligible based on behavioral health needs. There were not too many changes from the Q4 report, if I remember correctly. Probably the best way is to ask if anyone on the committee has any particular questions on this report. Based on the final year-end report, there were a couple of LGEs who were not able to spend the up to the 95% expenditure that we've set as a performance indicator for these funds. Those LGEs have been notified, and we're waiting on their corrective action plans for how they'll work to connect more of this funding to eligible families this year. Are there any questions on this report?
I see that Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
Oh, okay, so I remember you guys doing this upon our last meeting. You said that they were at target to reach there, and the majority of them would reach the 95 or the 90 the 95 percentile. But as you stated, they haven't, and then you guys are waiting for a report, but we were already waiting for this report the last meeting. So was there a delay because of what was the delay upon getting this? Because I remember this from the last meeting, and we were supposed to have this information to us this meeting.
So I guess I'm not remembering what was said at the last meeting, so maybe someone can refresh me, but this is the standard timeline. How we usually do these is that the LGEs, in the previous meeting, they give us the report to the best of their ability at the end of Q4, but the timing of the DD Council meeting doesn't line up with when the LGEs have all of their invoices. Essentially, they have to report on spending up through the end of June, but they haven't even completed all that spending yet by the time of the DD Council meeting, the last one. So we do have to then report out. It's usually at this time in the fall that we report out once they have all of those invoices and all those receipts ready. So this is the kind of the standard time frame when we do these reports. And you're right that when we spoke to LGs who looked like they were kind of on track to not spend enough, this is based on their report. They were optimistic that they were going to be able to get all of that spending out there, and then they didn't. There were a couple that didn't hit that mark. So then our response based on our contract with them is that we request that they submit to us corrective action plans, and they have to have 30 days to get those to us. And so I think those are due to us. I think we've received a couple of them, but I think they're due to us, I believe next week. And so that'll be them telling us, this is our plan. This is how we think we can do better and get more of this money out in the coming year.
Okay, so if it's due to y'all next week, means that we don't have our next council meeting until next year. Will we have that information? Because their corrective action should have been put in place, because that's 3 months from now, and things should have been moved along. So when we come back for our next meeting, we should have, even though that they have correction plans, we should have what else have they done, what's the progress, right?
So at the next meeting, that's when we'll do the Q2. And so hopefully, we'll be able to see on the Q2 report what progress that they're making at that point.
Right, because I'm just adamant about it, because this is mean that certain families aren't being served and people aren't getting, services because the money isn't being spent. So that's just why I'm so adamant about it, because we need to get this spending and the funding done so people can get to where they need to be at. So can that just the next time from when we have, like, when you give your report, because it's the 3 months, would that be able to be provided to us at that point?
I'm sorry, can you tell me what it is you're requesting? So of course we always report the Q2 report.
Yeah. So
is there additional information that the committee would like us to present at that time?
No, just the progress that they've made. Have they reached out, to whatever they need to do to assist them with spending the money? Have they done that? And why or why not? And at that point, if it still hasn't been done, because it's still 3 months out, even though they have 30 days, but you say your 30 days ends next week. So from that point, it's still 3 months that they have to work upon this. That's well enough time to develop a strategy, to get things done, to move stuff along, to spending to be spent.
Sure, and yeah, we will show that, we'll get their reporting and that'll be on order to report. And so we'll be able to see at that point if progress is being made.
Okay, yeah, that's all I was, for us to have for the next meeting.
Sure, of course.
Thank you.
Crystal White has her hand raised. Is it okay to speak?
Yes, go ahead, Crystal.
And I kind of wanted to mimic what Nicole was talking about and ask really quick. So what happens to these dollars if they are not spent? Do they roll over to the next budget for this same program, or are they kind of absorbed into general funds and go where we don't know where they're going to go?
So these funds are allocated by each individual LGE. And so they come out of the LGE, directors and board, certainly develop their budget. This is the funding that they allocate for this program. So I think that question would probably go to each individual LGE to respond to that question. If they don't accept the funds, then sort of what do they do with those funds?
So maybe I can ask the question a different way. We don't have any safeguards in place to say that if these dollars are not used by the end of the fiscal year, that they roll over into the same programs for the following fiscal year. We don't have any of those safeguards or anything like that in place, correct? So like you said, we're going to have to go to the LGs and try to figure out where the funds are, because if it starts over again next year, they start with the same budget or the budget that's approved, but not necessarily with these dollars that were left in this bucket, correct?
To my understanding, that's correct. These dollars are not directly allocated for this program, and here at the Office of Behavioral Health, these dollars don't pass through us. We don't have authority over how much each LGE.
Got it.
So
I just wanted to know, I was just mimicking, like I said, what Nicole was saying, why it was pertinent for these dollars to be spent, and why we're just kind of adamant on figuring out where and why and how in a timely manner that they should be spent, because that's what we have in the policies and procedures in place to safeguard this. So anyways, thank you, Nicole, for that question.
You're welcome.
Just to follow up, what they budget, which each LGE budgets for each of these, the consumer care resources and the flexible family funds, and this is for the Office of Behavioral Health, not DD. They decide how much they want to budget. There's not a requirement.
That is correct.
So the fact that they didn't spend all that they budget is not, because you could look and see that some of them budgeted less. They might have spent the entire amount. So if you look at, Jefferson Parish, they budgeted actually more than all the rest, almost double.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up Jefferson Parish. Jefferson Parish, we did not request a corrective action plan from Jefferson Parish, because Jefferson Parish spent over and above 100% of the amount of money they initially allocated to the program. The fact that they're showing as under on this report is based on the fact that they added a lot of extra funding in the middle of the year. So we did not feel like it was appropriate to request a correction action plan from them, because they're only showing as under because they had taken steps in the middle of the year to allocate a bunch of additional funding to this program. Did that answer your question, Bambi?
Yes, it did. And I see Nicole has her hand raised again.
Okay, yeah. See, this is the question that I had the last time at the last meeting, where where the funds are allocated to. I had that question the last time because they were encumbered funds, and they were like, really didn't get a straight answer from anybody. And there were multiple organizations on here that represented these organizations, and we didn't get a straight answer from either one. It was like the funds just went back, or they just wasn't used. And I'm just like, okay, where does it go? So I do want that question answered. Like, I really do, because I asked that the last time to all the multiple agencies, where does the money go back to? And I did not get a straight answer from them. And I looked through the transcripts, and there was not a straight answer given to me, or a clear one that I understood. I just left it because I was like, okay, I'll give them more time to, get what they have to get. So my other question was the one that spent significantly over Jefferson Parish. We asked about that the last time, and that was because they had extra funding, right? Well, why are they allowed to spend extra and above? Did they serve more? Because I asked that question too. Was more people served, and was the number of people that was served, was it double? And that wasn't answered. That was supposed to be brought to the table at this time too, because I asked that question on our last meeting. So, I'm just asking for that information to be brought back up. Maybe you might have slipped through, and that's fine, but I do want that information or that question answered, because I need to know.
So I would
interject,
ask for a couple of
Kristen.
Sorry, go ahead. Tanya, did you want to?
I just wanted to interject. I know that this is OBH's time, so I don't want to take your time, but it's state general funds, which is kind of both of our programs. I'm with OCDD. I feel like it's important to try to draw this picture for everyone that when each LGE receives their budget for state general funds, they don't get a check for that amount written to them that goes into like some sort of an account that then belongs to them and then they can spend. It's just a number that they can spend. And then as they provide the services, they bill us, they bill LDH for each service. And so if the LGE doesn't spend the money, it just remains in the state general dollars LDH account. So it's not like the money has already been given to the LGEs and then they have this excess amount that they can just use it for whatever. And so it remains in the state general fund account, and then that is appropriated for the following fiscal year. So I just kind of wanted to be clear that the LGEs don't just have all this excess money laying around that they didn't spend. It's just a number that they're allowed to spend, and then they have to bill for each thing that they provide. And also, Nicole, when you asked the question last week, I went back and watched the YouTube video of the meeting so I could be fresh about what we talked about. And I think you were asking about the Act 73 9% funds, and did it make a difference? Did they serve more people? And so that's going to be information that's OCDD is going to share, not from OBH when when Dr. Savicki is giving her information. Okay.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that part for me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Annie, and thanks, Nicole, for the question. I guess I would ask that if there's specific, because a lot of these questions I can't answer because they really are answerable by each particular LGE and their kind of fiscal process, and they're accountable to their boards. So if there are additional questions that the council would like for OBH to request answers for those questions to individual LGEs, I would ask that that the council provide those questions to me in writing so I can make sure that we're responding to those correctly. Do we have more questions on this? So this is the year-end report on the child side. Any more questions on this, or should we move to the next one?
You have two attendees with their hands raised. Rosalind Hemill and Kathy Dwyer.
Yeah, this is what I want to know. Does the money roll over in the account, or does it not roll back over, or does it take it? Where does the money go? And that's one question I want to know, because I don't know exactly if it goes back into the account, or does it go back to the state again? Or what happens to the money if they don't spend it right away?
So I have unfortunately the same answer, which is that our state office does not control this funding. This is LGEs, this is their budget that they allocate. So I can't answer that question. If we had specific questions that we wanted to ask the LGEs, we could request those, questions from those budget directors.
Yeah, but though, even with the budgets, how do you go about with the budgets that y'all do have? And how does it work?
So again, I apologize, I can't answer that question because this is not our budget. I'm not in charge of this budget. This is reporting comes from each of the LGEs. And we assemble that reporting and provide it to the DD Council, but I can't answer on behalf of an LGE about how they manage their budget. So we need to ask those questions of the individual LGEs.
I was just curious, where, all of this is really going, and where does the money go in that, do they kind of split it or what? I don't know. And I am a part of the council, and I'm just curious up on it.
Hey, Kristen, this is Brenton, and I'll email this to you for the next report. But I think some of the questions they're getting at is maybe, I guess, how the LGEs determine maybe how much they're budgeting for each program. I know on the DD side, we kind of have an idea of how that happens, but not necessarily on this side. So I can send that to you in an email, and maybe they can answer those questions in their next quarter report, exactly how they determine, I guess, what they're putting forth towards the CCR and the Flexible Family Fund program. And certainly
Sure.
any other questions that the committee might have, if they just let us know, I can include those in the email too. But that's one of them that seems like is a big question.
Yeah, absolutely, Brenton. That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Miss Kathy Dwyer has her hand raised.
Kathy.
Thank you, Bambi. To give a little more information for like the example with Jefferson Parish Human Services Authority, I am a member and have been chair in the past of their Regional Advisory Committee for Developmental Disability Services. And the reason they have extra money, more than what was obligated by the state general funds or appropriated by the state general funds, is because they have other revenue sources that they are able to tap into. They do the same for developmental disability services. When they have some extra money from their other revenue sources other than state general funds, they are very generous and add those funds to some of our DD services, just like they do for some of the behavioral health services. So hopefully that might answer some of the questions about what's remaining that are not state general funds and would not necessarily be funds that other regions would get.
Thank you, Kathy. That's appreciated. Yeah, that is what Jefferson Parish has reported to us in the past, that they have. They've been able to use a couple other funding sources to supplement this.
We have 2 questions in the chat box. Would you like me to read those?
Yes, you can.
Okay, Crystal White asked, do we know what percentage of the budget for each of these districts is allocated for these programs? I know we know the 9% for the DD side, but do we know how much for the behavioral side?
And I think that's the, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bambi.
I was gonna say, I think that's the question that Brenton's gonna send to you to try and find out, right?
Correct, yes. So a couple of things I wrote down based on the conversation that I'll send to you, Kristen, is how does the LGE determine how much they're going to budget for consumer care resources and flexible family fund? If they can give you an idea how much percentage of their budget is typically allocated to those programs, and that might answer the question on how they determine how much goes to those programs. But and then also just if they could tell you a better, or give you a better idea of what actually happens to the dollars that go unspent on their side.
Okay, do we have anything else on this report?
It looks clear.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the Q1 report. And so this is just, I should note that South Central requested an extension on submission of this report for obvious reasons. They were heavily impacted by Hurricane Ida. I believe that I saw pop up in my inbox just about an hour ago that they actually just did send their report in. I have not had a chance to review it or add it to this information. So I could submit that at a later date, or we can wait until the Q2, whatever the will is of the council. But this is just their initial reporting for Q1 spending of this year. You know, as is very typical, there's not a whole lot of spending that shows on the Q1 report, mostly because this report needs to come to the DD Council well before the quarter is actually, well before they are actually able to report the full amount of spending for the quarter. And also, of course, we have a couple of LGEs that use some additional federal funding to finance this program, and they have to use that first. And so for quite a while, I mean, I think you may recall that last year, for quite a while, a couple LGEs were showing 0% funding, and then they catch up at the end of the year because they then switch over to using their state general funds. Any questions on this? I would like to note that historically, and again, we're seeing here that the LGEs are doing a great job at connecting folks to the flexible family funds funding, which I think is a very helpful program for families, given that there's families just receive that and they're able to use that to manage their needs to support their children. So that becomes a really useful program to families, and we always have kids on the wait list, but then kids age out and getting families connected to those and filling those slots.
I did have a quick question for you, Kristen. For MCAL's budget, they said 25% of the total was spent on CY. Can you tell me what CY is? Do they just mean children and youth, or is that something else?
Yeah, no, okay. I did ask for some more questions on that. Yeah, so children and youth, because they're making some decisions about need based on child clients versus adult clients.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I got that response after I sent this to you, but.
I don't see any hand raised.
So this is the year-end report. There was just one LGE that was underspent for this, and again, they were expecting a corrective action plan from them, and then the rest of the LGEs did well in expending this funding. And you'll, just to, sorry, real quick to leave this up, Brett, and your question on MCAL was really helpful, because you'll notice that they are not on this list of LGs who traditionally allocate funding for, on the adult side, for behavioral health clients for the supported living funding. And they have decided to do so. So again, that's another example of LGEs, assessing the needs in their regions and making different funding decisions. And so they are going to show up on the report for this coming year. They may not, we'll have to see. I may not have gotten it into, because I didn't quite understand their notations until after I sent the report. I may not have them on the report yet, but we'll get that adjusted.
So this is the one you're saying on the first quarter report under supported living, they'll start showing up. Okay.
Yeah, no, and I didn't realize that until after I sent this to the council, but we'll get them on this report, because they're telling us that they're allocating funding on the adult side now. Any questions on this one?
I don't think I see any.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Savicki. So now we will move on to our report from the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. Ms. Tanya Murphy will be presenting that information.
Hi. I'm just waiting for you to pull up the fiscal year 21 year end report.
That's what I was going to ask. You have a lot of reports too, so I didn't know if there was a certain order you wanted to go in, or just
We'll just go in the order you have them on the agenda.
Okay,
it's fine.
that works.
So this is the total year final expenditures for fiscal year 21. I know that we had in the fourth quarter reporting, there were some LGEs that had not expended up to the 95%. And I said, I felt sure that they all would be able to meet that. And they did, except for Northeast Delta Human Services Authority. They hit 89% of spending in their individual and family support program. We did note that in their accountability plan monitoring. They already saw it on their own. By the time we reached out to them, they already had a corrective action plan in place. They'd already convened a meeting with their board and have a pretty robust plan in place, so that this coming fiscal year, they won't come under the mark like they have this year. So it's statewide, it's 98% of the individual and family support program money was spent. Any questions on individual and family support for the year-end totals?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll move on to the flexible family funds. 99% spent. I did see that South Central Louisiana Human Services Authority was at 90%. They did indicate to me that they had a staffing shortage for a bit there. It took them a while to find really qualified individuals to fill the positions. Once they got the flexible family fund staff positions filled, they are going full into filling all their slots, and have indicated that they will be getting all those flexible family fund slots filled, and they will be spending all that money next fiscal year. I guess if there's any questions about flexible family fund, if not, we can move on to the Act 73. So this is the report that tells us the total amount of state general funds that each LGE received, the total amount that equals to 9% of their state general funds, and how much each LGE budgeted towards Act 73 services, how much they expended, and then the final column tells us the percentage of the 9% that they did spend. We're shooting for 100% of this. I think that you can see most of the LGEs spend beyond the required 100%. They go beyond it. And if they're not beyond it, they're very close. And this brings me to Nicole's question that she posed last meeting that was inspired, that I really liked, and that wasn't something I had thought of. So what we've done is gone into our archives and pulled the final expenditure reports as back, I think, to 2015. And what we're going to do is get our business analytics to take the reports from 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 now, take all 7 of those years and build a chart that provides the information that I think will help everybody see if Act 73 has been successful in increasing the amount budgeted and the number of people served in each LGE. I received the final expenditure amounts, and then we had a hurricane, and I didn't manage to get that chart built. That's not my forte. I have to get somebody else to chart build for me. And so all that information has been gathered and submitted to the person that will do it. And I do believe I'll have that actual data for you next DD Council meeting.
So Tanya, what you're saying is we'll be able to see through the years if the LGEs have, how much they have allocated, what percentage of their budgets they've allocated, and then we'll be able to see the impact of Act 73. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I think that's what I've asked them to build for me, is a chart that shows 3 different questions: number of people served, amount allocated, amount expended, and for each year. So it'll be kind of in a chart where it shows like where in 2015 they were for all 3 of those things, and then 16, 17, 18, 19, and then we'll have indicate where Act 73 started, so that you can see, and we'll all be able to see, does it go up? I just did kind of a really amateur version of I just added up some of the numbers, and I did see an increase. So I think it's going to show that the Act 73 has had an impact, but we'll be able to see it in something that's very easy to understand once we get something built, and I'll be able to report that to the committee next meeting.
And Tanya, are you prepared to say anything in regards to, I mean, we still have discrepancies in funding for our human service districts, and just wanted to see human service districts and authorities. And are you prepared to say anything in regards to any efforts LDH has to have more equitable funding across the LDH?
Yeah, I mean, this is, and I wish I could have all that stuff as quickly as it should be provided to the DD Council. It's what I've done is met with all the DD directors for all the LGEs and have told them that we're going to be pulling together information and have them start thinking about it. I provided them the statewide compiled information about which is a report we're going to talk about here later, but what specific services we buy for people in different LGEs, and so that they have an opportunity to see which LGE is, for example, spending a whole bunch of money on adult diapers, whereas another LGE is not, the discrepancies, and let them have some time to prepare some kind of an answer for why they are or aren't for these different services. And then I just still need to schedule the meeting with them to have the discussion so that I can bring that information back to the DD Council.
Okay, and I think that was another, not quite the question that I was asking, but that is a question that we've been talking about at this meeting. But what I'm talking about is Julie had reached out to me and said that the LDH has was gonna work on trying to have some type of standardized funding formula for the LGEs that they were working on. Are you aware of those efforts?
No.
Okay. That was my question.
Well, I guess I didn't answer it then. I gave it a whirl, but it wasn't the right thing. So yeah, but no, I'm not aware of what's going on with that. So I can't talk about that today. So I think we can move on to the next report on the agenda. There is a lot of data on this report, and it's something that you guys will all have to take time to really look at. It breaks it down by how many requests were received, how many were reviewed, how many were fully funded, partly funded, all of the different options they have with each request. And it has it by priority. So, it's something that you're going to have to look at to know if you have any questions about it or not, but it's just data that we're providing to the DD Council for you to look through and make a determination if there's questions, which is part of the reason why you guys were asking why some LGEs spent money on certain services. If you can scroll down, it kind of breaks it down by there. It breaks it down by individual items that are purchased by each LGE and by each quarter, and then a fiscal year. So there are 10 of these, one for each LGE, and how much money they spent on each individual item. This has been a work in progress through the years, through requests for information by the DD Council. We updated the categories in the participant services database so that they could be more specific. Training was provided to each LGE to make sure that they understood the importance of delineating each request into a proper category so that the information can come out and be provided to the DD Council. Any questions about this? There's so much information, and it might be something you have to go through and come back with questions, but this is the fiscal year end of the fiscal year report for each individual item that was spent for each LGE.
Nicole Banks has her hand raised. Nicole.
Okay, yeah, I do. It is a lot of data, and I was looking through all of the data and how you guys have it, where some received it, and what was partially funded, what was fully funded, and according to the priorities, and the only major thing that just a discrepancy that I ain't gonna say a discrepancy. I just saw something that I saw was up in Region 2. They have a lot of requests. They have a lot of ones that were like, they the only ones that are kind of like really missing the mark. I'm not sure what number, who's Region 2?
That's capital area. And which report are you referring to? The number
The one
request?
the one that you were talking about, the request, and it had
I
it
think
by
it's-
priority, and it had the
That's
one that's fully funded, that's partially funded. That one, that's the one I'm talking about. On those, it says under Region 2. They're the only ones that's like, I'm not gonna say missing a mark, but theirs is significantly different than the rest of the other ones. Because the other ones, like, even though they received the request, they've already funded it, or they're partially have funded it. one, they received all of these requests and review, but then not even a little bit over half of them has been done. And then the other half has been, partially, funded. So I was just like, okay, well, the numbers is a little off, but this is the only one though. Like the rest of them look like, they're on track, they're on target. If they received the request, they funded it. If they didn't fund it, they partially funded it. So they're on track for the information for the information that I see that I am looking at from the reports that you provided. So they're the only ones that I would question about, but everybody else look like they provided and they're kind of, on track on what they're supposed to be doing with the funding.
Your concern is the number of requests that capital area gets versus the number of requests that they actually fund?
Right, because they're that's what I'm saying. They're the only ones that that is really off with. Everybody else ones, like it measures up all the way up to the T, up to the number, but they're the only ones that is a little off. That's all. That's the only thing I found in the report that I can see.
Nicole, are you talking about in regards to capital area under the the request partly funded, where they have 260? Is that what you're saying is different?
I'm talking about the one, okay, see where they have, it's for 111, that's 111 that was received. And then it's 61 and then 39 and then go underneath it's a 494, but only 250 and then, 195. Like they're the only ones that's a little bit off with their numbers. The rest of them, if you can look at it, they all add up. Like all of the numbers add up except for the two. Some of their numbers are a little off.
Okay, so Nicole, are you saying, but are you looking at the column that says requests partly funded and that
I'm looking at both of
number?
them because I look at both of them to add up the numbers because even if it's not the number, the 111, but they have they funded 61. Well, they partially funded 39. So I look at the totality of those two numbers because it will still be a request that was reviewed. So I don't just look at the fully funded ones. I have to look at the partial ones too, because they're actually serving those people too. They just didn't give them all the money, only gave them partial, a portion of it. So.
Okay, so this is what I'm seeing, Nicole, if I'm going to try and get to your question. So the total number of requests reviewed, 111.
Right.
So the requests that were fully funded, 61, and the requests that were partly funded, 39. Add those together, you get 100. So now what happened to the other 11?
Right.
Question. So then if you go down the list a little bit, you'll see one of them was denied. 9 of the requests were closed and 2 of them are waiting.
Okay, so that goes into that number too then. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
So 9, 10, 11, actually that comes to 12, but we're looking to figure out what happened to those other 11, and that's where those numbers are.
Oh, okay. So this takes a part. Okay, this takes a part of it too. Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
You have 2 guests with their hands raised, Ms. Liz Gary and Rosalind Hemo.
You can, they can speak if you, Liz?
Thank you, Bambi. Tanya, I just had a question. If you go down to the report where it was broken out into by the different categories, diapers and things like that, one of the things I'm noticing, and you may remember this back from, I'm noticing the PCA costs are almost $500,000, almost just half of the budget. And I don't know if you remember a while back when they did the 175 children's choice waivers, where they actually turned over those people who were using high dollar amounts of the respite in order to do, and were able to get children's choice waivers. So my question is that, do y'all look at the ones who are getting all of this respite and just double check and see if maybe any of those potentially have needs that change that are more intense. So maybe their sunscreen is no longer a 0, 1, or 2, and they should be a 3 or a 4 to potentially move them off of getting the respite in state dollars and possibly offering them a waiver?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is specifically exactly what we've been doing. Each LGE, you know, if they've got somebody that's spending up a ton of their individual family support budget, they are going to try and see if there's a way or a need that the waiver that the waiver would be more appropriate for. And so they do request sun screenings and they, you know, revisit those sun screenings. And we just recently had a training and kind of a revamping of the sun screening process to make sure that they're taking into consideration individual and family support money and does that meet their needs? And is that funding going to run out? And is there something additional? Would it be more appropriate for a waiver? So we absolutely do look at it. I realize that this shows a ton of money is spent on PCA, and that is something that we are looking into.
Thank you, Tanya. And I'm happy to see that the money is going to that, because I know there's so many families who do need it, even if they didn't reach the 3 or a 4. So I am glad to see that there is a large amount of money going to there, but I just wanted to make sure that we're not missing the mark with the potential that some of these people could actually be higher than a 1 or a 2 and could have had a waiver by now. So I appreciate it, Tanya. Thank you. Thank you, Bambi.
And just want to throw in there also that, you know, a lot of times the PCA needs of the families are short-term. Mom's going to have surgery and need some help, some intensive, very expensive PCA assistance, but only for 6 weeks. And then she's back to being able to provide the care that she normally does. And so in those cases, a waiver really wouldn't be what the family needs, but a whole bunch of PCA money from individual and family support would meet that need and then be done. So, you know, these are just examples of a situation where somebody might need a lot of PCA from IFS and not necessarily a waiver. Any other questions?
Yeah, I appreciate your example of that could potentially be an issue. And maybe, you know, with COVID, I could see where that could even be more prevalent, the example that you gave. But I don't think that this dollar amount is pretty high. And so, I mean, if we're not drawing down, we're losing the opportunity to draw down the federal dollars. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood this is state general funds. So, and waivers we're able to draw down the federal dollars. So just want to make that point.
Rosalind has her hand raised.
3 or 4 years.
With the funds in that for 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters, does all of this kind of add up? You know, but it's coming up to like in the 4th quarter that you have here 1 million in all. How can you come up with that kind of figure?
I have no idea. You tell me.
And that from like different quarters, you have like different prices.
Yeah.
I mean, different amounts.
Yeah.
So how can we go off on that?
Beats me. I wish I knew.
That's what I want to know. With different funds.
What did Dr. Sutton tell you? Like, did he give you any input on this?
Can you scroll a little bit up on this one on the screen so I can see the final figures for down. There. I'm just trying to look at the numbers and see if I can figure out what the question is. So some of these figures on here roll over and increase each quarter. Some of them are one-time funds that are spent only in each quarter. So I wouldn't say that you would be able to go through each line and then add it all up so that it comes to the total. I don't know. So tell me again the question and maybe I'll have a better idea of how to answer. Are you just trying to ask like how the math works out on these charts, or why it's spent, or I'm just trying to figure out what you're trying to know?
Yeah, what I want to know, like in the final year, because you have like the 988,64.
Okay.
And how did you kind of round with the figures in the final year like
So
that?
you're multiplying or you times it? I mean, are you doing
But
timetables?
how can you, with the like from the 1 all the way down to like the 559?
I don't know.
Okay, so
That's what I want to know.
So the total number of contracts in that whole column is 559 contracts. So you add up all the numbers in that column for the total of all contracts. In the last column that says spent, if you add up all of the numbers in that whole column, and it brings you to $1,020,988.64.
Tanya, this is Bambi. So I think what your answer to my question earlier is the answer to this question. I just didn't put it together. So what we talked about at the last meeting in regards of you getting with the human service districts, the DD directors, and kind of going through this and analyzing it, that didn't happen.
Right, it did. I mean, I did get with them and I told them we were going to, so that they could have an opportunity to look at the information and prepare. But I didn't have an opportunity to actually schedule the meeting with them yet, but I will have that done this quarter.
Okay. And I see several of our DD directors are on, so thank y'all for being on. Do we have any other questions about this report? Okay, so Brenton, we can go to the next one.
This is our first quarter expenditures for individual and family support. And the Flexible Family Fund. So with Flexible Family Fund, it's a little easier to consistently spend at around 25% in the first quarter, 50% in the second. So that one, because it's a set amount of money that automatically goes to families each quarter. With individual and family support, the first quarter, they're just getting started. And so we don't generally see a problem with them getting all the money spent. I did want to bring to your attention Northeast Delta Human Services Authority, because they were the LGE that spent 89% at the end of last fiscal year. And you can see that they're already at 18% for this first quarter. And so I think their corrective action plan is working. Any questions about first quarter expenditures?
This is Bambi for Metropolitan Human Service District for the Flexible Family Funds. It's 8% expended year to date. Why is that?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that one. It just kind of jumped out at me while I was reviewing it, and I'll have to send them a request for some information about that.
Yeah, that seems odd because it normally would be around 25%.
Can you scroll over to the right so I can see slots? Maybe I need to move my pictures here so I can see.
But it looks like they only have one slot that's not filled. Oh, wait, no, they're all filled. Hmm.
You know, that looks like a typo to me, because if they've got all their slots filled, it should be 25%. So I'll double check with them to find out about that. And then Act 73 report.
You know what it looks like? It looks like they put in 1 month, because if it would be the 3 months, that'd be around 100,000, which would be a quarter of their budget. So that might be what they did.
Yeah.
Put in the total for 1 month. Okay.
And this is the first quarter, so we get to see the new state general fund figures for this fiscal year, the amount allocated up to the 9%, and then how much they've budgeted to make sure that they've budgeted the 9%, and then how much they've expended. Any questions about the Act 73?
It's like capital area came in a little under. Do we know why?
Yeah, we do. I did notice that. And I did send them an email and say, it looks like you haven't budgeted the required 9%. So they did get together and talk about it. They have altered that budget, but they sent it in a little late for me to let you guys know. But it will be equal to or exceed the 9% for next quarter, which will also increase the amount of money that they have in their individual and family support and their flexible family fund budgets.
Great, thanks.
Yep, and everybody else is at or above, so. Looks good. And then we have the first quarter approved pending funding list. There were only two on the report when I did it as of September 30th. Any questions about this report?
Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
Okay, I was just asking because I see the priority levels are 3 and 4. Is the priority levels 1 being the highest and 4 being the least, or 4 being the highest and 1 being the least?
1 is the highest for individual and family support.
This quarter allocated to priority 1 or 2, we went straight to 3 and 4. That does not seem right.
These are the individuals that have submitted a request, but they have not yet been funded. So it does make sense that a priority 3 or 4 is being put to the side until they have more money available, because they are funding the 1s and 2s.
So the 1s and 2s just don't have the funding yet, but they will receive it, and the 3 and 4 does, right?
They have funded. They have funded every single request that they've gotten. Well, maybe not. They've funded every one of them, but they've either funded it or denied it, except for these 2. So they're funding the 1s and 2s, and the only requests that they haven't been able to fund yet are these 2, which is they were priority 3 and a priority 4.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions on this report? Or any other questions for Tanya? Because I think this is your last report, right?
I think so.
Okay. Anything for Tanya? Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate the report.
Bambi, if
Yes,
you
ma'am.
had, I think that Julie might be on. If you had that question that you asked me and I wasn't able to answer, she might be on the line now. She might be able to
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for being late.
So Julie, what I was asking about when we're looking at the funding and Act 73 and the kind of what we've talked about for many years about the kind of this inequity in kind of the funding distributions to the Human Service District. Is there any work being done to try to address that?
So there is in fact, the reason I was late is because we had kind of our senior team standing meeting, and part of the discussion there was our Louisiana Department of Health business plan. And I was trying to, so I don't know the exact wording, but in the Department of Health business plan that'll be coming out, one of the things that they are looking at is equitable funding and coming up with a funding formula for our local governing entities. We've started doing some work with them. You know, for those of you who may not be aware, we have for the LGEs, there are 10 of them. It gets kind of confusing because sometimes people think, well, there's 9 in OPH under LDH, but Jefferson Parish operates as a local governing entity separately. So 1 in 10 kind of got split. But they all became human services districts and authorities sort of at different times, kind of along the spectrum of probably like a 10 or 15 year time frame. And so there's been questions through the years, well, how did certain districts get funding, or was there a formula that was set, or how do you even look at if there needs to be more money, then how is that distributed or whatnot? And there's not really been let's say a consistent way that folks have all been a part of developing that process to be able to look at that. And so what we want to be able to do this year, and it's a commitment from Secretary Phillips in the LDH business plan, is to take a look at that funding. Can we come up with a funding formula that makes sense, that is equitable, and really taking a look at, like, we don't want to take anything away from anyone. So it might be looking at more about, you know, how do we, moving forward, if there are new dollars, how do we allocate those, or what do we look at? So there's a whole lot of things that need to go into that consideration. But one of the activities we'll be engaged in through the process of our business plan and setting up then stakeholder groups to take a look at that, we'll be looking at that, at funding, and the formula we use as we look at funding for the human services districts and authorities.
Thanks, Julie.
Uh-huh.
Does anyone have any other questions for OCDD before we move on? Okay. So we will move on to Office of Aging, and Kelly Monroe with the ARC will give the report on SPAS, on the State Personal Assistance Program.
Yep. Hello, everybody. Okay, so you have the thing up front. Everybody's got a copy. So the first quarter, we're going to report on the first quarter because we already reported on the year end last time. So this quarter is going to look a little different with the demographics. This quarter we served 44 people, which was higher than the first quarter last year, but lower than last quarter. So it's back down to 44 people. There were some changes when it came to race. For Caucasians, it decreased by 3%. And those that were being served were 14 of those people were African-American, 29 were Caucasian, and 1 was is Hispanic. So of those, there were 29 males and 15 females. And the ages of these individuals range between 21 years old and 89. So like I said before, some of the demographics dropped and some of the people. So of course, what's going to change is going to be the regions as well. So in region 1, there were 5 people served. there were 6, but now there are 5. Region 2, there were 8. Region 3, there were 3. Last report, we reported 4 in Region 3. Region 4, there were 3. Region 5, there were 5. Region 6, there were 2. Region 7, there were 11. Region 8, there are 1. Region 9 is 6, and none in Region 10. If you go down to the services that were provided, everyone received support coordination. So there's 44 people who received support coordination. Of those 44, 36 of those received personal care assistance. 3 of them were rental assistance, utility, and, well, 2 were rental assistance and 1 was utility assistance. There were 4 people who received medical supplies and stipends. So of those costs, the total spent was $143,394.63. These expenses were a little bit higher than last year, but we also last year served, I think, 3 people more, so it makes sense. So on the waiting list, let's see. Okay, thanks. We were able to decrease the waiting list a little bit. Last quarter, we were able to get some people some one-time funds that were on the waiting list. And since we were able to do some of these home modifications, they no longer needed to be receive services. So it went from 55 people down to 52. Of those, there are on the waiting list, there are 19 of those people are African-American, 28 of those are Caucasians, there are 1 person who identifies as biracial, and then 4 of them chose not to answer. So 28 of the people are male and 24 female. So if we go down, I think that the major change, there was a couple of changes where now we have some people who were interested in dental, where we didn't have that before. There's an additional person in home modifications. But all in all, we need almost the same amount of money as what we needed before, even though we have less people. The people who were added, it kind of equaled out on the same amount of money. So we're still needing $1.1 million if we want to completely get rid of the waiting list. And that's just an estimate. So that's all I have for you today. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Kelly, I have a question. I don't think I've ever asked this before, but for the support coordination services that's provided to everyone, who provides that?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. At the bottom, you'll see that we have a new project director. Her name is Whitney Leday. Yeah, we'll meet her soon. But she provides the support coordination. And then in our office, Dawn does the fiscal agent part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Kelly? Okay. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay.
And looks like we're at the end of our agenda. Do we have any announcements?
Just a reminder to everyone that after this meeting at 3 p.m. is our executive committee meeting from 3 to 5 p.m. And then tomorrow is our full council meeting starting at 8:30. And you can go to our website, council meetings page, to sign up for the registration for the Zoom link if you have not done so yet.
Thanks, Brenton. Any other announcements? Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we will go ahead and adjourn by unanimous consent. So thank you, guys.